Merge killed the other day by an 18 win.
Warren. All right, who memorized their verse?
Which one are we on? 2 Timothy 1:7. I looked at
You
this
got
like
better
50
than
times
me.
yesterday.
I haven't looked at
Matt, what's your verse? No, nothing.
Nothing. I got.
Bill?
I'm gonna go Mulligan.
All right.
Won't be fair that I know it.
You didn't even turn it on, did you?
Kate?
Oh, it's
I know it's don't do fear and timidity, but do
for
power,
God
love,
is not a
and
fear. A
self-discipline.
God.
But I don't know the actual words.
Hold on.
That's not even fair. I know it.
Not sending us a spirit.
For
of-
God did not give us a spirit of fear and timidity, but of power, love, and self-discipline. 1 Timothy 1:7. Oh man! So, Bill, do you want to come up and redeem yourself? Do you think you could recite the verse this morning? All right, come here, Bill. Give Bill a hand. I'm sorry to embarrass them like that. Let's hear. No. Yeah, you get a bowl of ice cream if you get this. Go ahead.
Oh, do I?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. That's good.
I don't have
That's
one
a
ready.
plus. So, for God did not give us a spirit of fear and timidity, but of power, love, and self-discipline.
What's the reference? Hold on. Hold your applause.
2 Timothy 1:7.
Give him a hand. You guys can quiz Kate and Matt and Mitch later. That when I pulled the camera out, oh man, I saw such scowls, and then Matt thought I was faking it, and it was, yeah, they hate me. Anyways, let's dive into our unforgettable verse this week. I'm going to read some scripture to you. Joshua 24. Joshua gathered all the tribes of Israel to Shechem and summoned the elders, the heads, and the judges, and the officers of Israel. And they presented themselves before God. And Joshua said to all the people, "Thus says the Lord, the God of Israel. Long ago your fathers lived beyond the Euphrates, Terah, the father of Abraham and of Nahor, and they served other gods. Then I took your father Abraham from beyond the river and led him through all the land of Canaan and made his offspring many. I gave him Isaac, and to Isaac I gave Jacob and Esau. I gave Esau the hill country of Seir to possess, but Jacob and his children went down to Egypt. And I sent Moses and Aaron, and I plagued Egypt with what I did in the midst of it. And afterward I brought you out." So this book is this chapter is summing up all the things that had happened to the Israelites. So from Genesis all the way to Joshua. This is the book 6 in the Old Testament. And it's kind of telling the story in Joshua how they kind of took control of Canaan. And so at the end of Joshua's life, he's kind of recounting this, giving this big speech to all his people. It continues on here. It says, "Then I brought your fathers out of Egypt, and you came to the Red Sea. And the Egyptians pursued your fathers with chariots and horsemen to the Red Sea. And when they cried to the Lord, he put darkness between you and the Egyptians and made the sea come upon them and cover them. And your eyes saw what I did in Egypt. And you lived in the wilderness a long time. Then I brought you to the land of the Amorites, who lived on the other side of the Jordan, and they fought with you, and I gave them into your hand. And you took possession of their land, and I destroyed them before you. Then Balak, the son of Zippor, king of Moab, arose and fought against Israel. And he sent and invited Balaam, the son of Beor, to curse you. But I would not listen to Balaam. Indeed, he blessed you. So I delivered you out of his hand. And you went over to the Jordan and came to Jericho. And the leaders of Jericho fought against you. And also, I was going to practice these names, and I felt like I wanted to be true and not go actually read the pronunciations, so I'm just going to go for this. Sorry to you Bible scholars out there. And also, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Girgashites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. Hold your applause. And I gave them into your hand. And I sent a hornet before you, which drove them out before you, the 2 kings of the Amorites. It was not by your sword or by your bow. I gave you a land on which you had not labored, and cities that you had not built, and you dwell in them. You eat the fruit of vineyards and olive orchards that you did not plant. So this week, I want to talk about this unforgettable verse. We've been talking all month. We talk about what we're going to memorize, and I think this verse really, really kind of has so much power in our lives and is like a long, long thing we can live. And so I kind of put it up here for you. I hope you guys can start and have this done by the end of the day. The cards you have are fake. That's not true. This is the actual verse, and I'm kidding. Anyways, no, this month, so we're memorizing this, and I want to talk to you about actually what happens after this kind of long speech that Joshua gave. But first, Look at this. I highlighted all this stuff. It's really interesting to me. It says, "Then I took your father. I led him through all the land." This is God talking. Joshua is sharing what God says. "I made his offspring many. I gave him Isaac. And to Isaac I gave Esau and Jacob. I gave Esau the hill country. I sent Moses and Aaron. I plagued Egypt. I brought you out. I brought your fathers out. I put darkness between you and the Egyptians. Your eyes saw what I did in Egypt. I brought you to the land of the Amorites. I destroyed them before you. I gave them into your hand. I delivered you. I gave them into your hand. I sent the hornet before you. I gave you a land in which you had not labored, and cities that you had not built, and you dwell in them. You eat the fruit of vineyards and olive orchards that you did not plant. You and I are eating from vineyards that we did not plant, and living in cities that we didn't build, in a land that we didn't labor for or fight for, and I'm talking the American Revolution, of course. We're born into families that we didn't choose, and we probably have baggage in those families that we don't even know about that we didn't pick. And at a time that we didn't set, and with a name that was given to you, you didn't pick your name, it was given to you. Some of us might have changed it because we really didn't like that name, but you didn't pick your original name. And we were born into circumstances that we couldn't control, and there was decisions made about us or for us. You didn't put yourselves here. Our life is a gift, and you're eating the fruit of vineyards that someone else planted. I know this is really, really lame, but this is a big Bible. I don't know if you guys have seen these before. I brought this up here because I wanted to read something out of Job and I felt like it didn't carry the weight if I carried the iPad, so I brought my Bible here. But Job, the book of Job, is this story of God. Like, Job was a holy and righteous man, and he lost everything. And so there's chapter after chapter of God telling Job to, you're not God, I'm sorry, his friends telling Job to curse God and forget God, and it all gets to the end. And Job's life is a mess at this point. Now the whirlwind, God speaks to Job, and he says, where were you? And this is after Job was questioning, saying, God, what's going on? Where were you when I laid the foundation of the earth? Tell me if you have its understanding. Who determined the measurement? Surely you know. Or who stretched the line upon it? I'm not going to read all this. I'm going to skip. Who shut the sea who shut in the seas with doors when it burst out from the womb? When I made clouds its garment and thick darkness its swaddling band? Have you commanded the morning since your days began? Have you entered the springs of the sea or walked into recesses of the deep? It goes on for 2 chapters like that. It's a really beautiful, beautiful verse. I'd encourage you to read it. It's awesome to see what God has created. All this to say, we should have gratitude for where we're at. We didn't pick where we're born. All of us here, from what I understand, could have been born in America. We're living in America right now. We're in circumstances we can't control. Eating from vineyards and olive orchards that we did not plant. And so all that in mind, Joshua is kind of summing this up, and he goes, now, therefore, fear the Lord. If anybody remembers, the fear of the Lord is the foundation of wisdom. No, it's close. Wisdom. Yeah, we memorized that a couple weeks ago. But so now, therefore, fear the Lord and serve him in sincerity and in faithfulness. And if it is evil in your eyes to serve the Lord, choose this day whom you will serve, whether the gods your father served in the region beyond the river, or the gods of the Amorites in whose land you now dwell. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. This verse here, I think, is the shortest verse that we've talked about, and it's also one of the longest, because it's not like a simple, I'm going to do this today and tomorrow. And I think Matt and Mitch and Bill and Kate should be able to memorize this one. I'll check with them and report back to you. But it's super, super short, and this should be easy to remember. In fact, it's not even a whole verse. It's actually a segment of the verse. You saw why I took the one verse there and cut it. So it's just 12 words. And I know this could be a cliche, and you've seen this on your Pinterest boards, on your walls, and at the home store. But I don't want this to be another cliche. I really want us to kind of get this in our hearts and our mind. I think by the end of the sermon, I'm going to say it so many times, you usually already have it memorized, but I really want us to kind of work through this morning. And it's about how you say it. So, as for me and my house, we're going to serve the Lord. Sometimes we say it in triumph, like something awesome just happened. Action Church, we just served these people. As for me and my house, we're going to serve the Lord. Yes, it's kind of a rah-rah moment. Or so you go share in your life, or something great happens because you've been following God. Or sometimes we say it looking forward. Like I have a young family. I'm 30 years old, and I can look forward with my family, my 3 girls, and be like, as for me and my house, we're going to serve the Lord. We're going to go this way. And there's those of us who are older. I'm 30 years old and I feel old. Sometimes we're looking back down and we're saying, as for me and my house, we've served the Lord and we're going to keep serving the Lord. And sometimes I say this in my depression and my doubt and my anxiety. I read Bible stories to my daughters and about the Old Testament, and we're talking, this is from the Old Testament, but sometimes I read these stories to them, and for some reason the books we have always rhyme, and I'm like, this just feels so fake. Like this story is so outrageous, I can't believe this happened. And in that doubt and like insecurity, like am I leading my family wrong? Am I making bad decisions? I can say, but as for me and my house, we're going to serve the Lord. I've seen what's happened before, and I can still continue to trust you, God. I doubt your doubts is something that gets stuck in my head when I think about that. Like, just because of that, I know what God's done, and I can doubt my doubts and move on. And sometimes it's about how you say it with the but. Like, but as for me and my house, we're going to serve the Lord. Like, but I know my friends are doing this, but as for me and my house, we're going to serve the Lord. Or, but I know this has happened in my family, but as for me and my house, we're going to serve the Lord. And me and my house has like a connotation. Again, I have a traditional nuclear family here with my 2.5 kids and little mini golden doodle. So I know it can be like, oh, Josiah, it's easy. You and your house, that's nice. Maybe you're single and you're like, it's just me, and I still think you can serve God in that. It doesn't need to be your house. But as for me and my cat, we're going to serve the Lord. Maybe it's me and my Mercedes. I don't know. I feel like single dudes like to buy Mercedes. I'm not sure. No offense to anybody who has Mercedes. Sorry, Steve. As for me, in my house, we're going to serve the Lord. Maybe we're older today, and like we can look back at generations and be like, me and my children and my grandchildren and my great-grandchildren, we're going to serve the Lord. Or teenagers, I didn't forget about you. I think everything you own is your parents, but I think maybe as for me and my book bag, we can serve the Lord is the best I could come up with. But I think my point there is that in our teenagerness and in our singleness and in whatever families we have, we can serve the Lord in that. Maybe your parents aren't believers, whether young or old, and you, just because that nuclear family isn't there, you can still serve the Lord in whatever situation you're in. Maybe you're divorced and you're like, my house is split, and so maybe it's me and half my possessions. We can serve the Lord in the part my lawyer owns. But we all, where we're at, our history, things we have, we can serve the Lord in that. I don't want the word household to scare you away or be a bad word here. You can substitute just about anything in there. And it's not just for me as my house, like not just the people we are or the person we're living, but it's as for me and my skills, the things I can do. We can go serve the Lord. I am very, very bad. Like Don talks all about contracting things. I will never talk to you about contracting or construction because I am awful, and I will pay somebody to do it every time. So as for me and my money, I'm going to pay someone to fix my house. But also, as for me and my money, I can serve the Lord too. Or as for me and my influence, the people that I have relationships with that I can influence in a good way. And this might be my family. It might be a friend. It might be a coworker. As for me and my privilege, I know I just triggered half of you, but listen, hear me out. As for me in the situation that I was born into, like we didn't pick, again, we live in like the richest country in the world. We didn't pick where we're at. We all have a certain privilege about us that we could use for others and serve the Lord with. How about as for me and my pain, we will serve the Lord. Things that have happened to us in our lives, we can use that and take that and serve the Lord that way too. Maybe someone else is having that thing, or whatever that is, you can take something that's bad and turn it around. We see that constantly in the Bible. Maybe me and my history, the things that I've been through, the things that I've seen, the things that I've done, you can serve the Lord with that too. You can take that and show others that I've been there. Choose wisely in a situation. Come on, use some thought about that. As for me and my authority, or as for me and my position. So not just leaders like leading down, but those of us who work and who have bosses and managers, we could lead up to them and be good influences and serve the Lord through loving them. As for me and my feelings, I am task-oriented. I'm not relationship-oriented. Those of you who are friends with me or close to me, you know that about me. I struggle with that. But as for those of you who are strong and relational in that thing, you can serve the Lord by doing that. And in me and my task-orientedness and my lack of feelings, I can serve the Lord with that too. We all have different gifts and different abilities. We all have different resources And gifts, I said that. And personality. Like different personalities can serve the Lord different ways too. Some of us are super detail-oriented. Some of us couldn't give a crap about details. So I think all of that, wherever we're at, whatever kind of family we live in, whatever our skills are, we can serve the Lord. And serve the Lord is such a kind of a weighty, like ambiguous, like what does this even mean kind of thing. And I kind of thought about this. So the first part before this verse says, "Now therefore, fear the Lord and serve him in sincerity and in faithfulness. Put away the gods that your fathers served beyond the river and in Egypt and serve the Lord." So I think about like what they were serving before they got here to the promised land, or before they were serving a God, the gods of their fathers. They were sacrificing to them. And so to me, it's, what are you sacrificing? How are you sacrificing your skills, money, influence, privilege, pain, history, authority, position, feelings, resources, gifts, and personality to the Lord? All those things that we have, those abilities we have, how are we serving the Lord and sacrificing with them? Are you using them for yourself, or are you using them for others? Is it, but as for me and my household, we're going to take care of ourselves? Or is it, as for me and my house, we're going to serve the Lord? And maybe our God is money or relationships or things or material stuff. There's all kinds of things that we can fill that void with and end up serving that instead. I think that worshiping idols and these idols that we have here in 2018, it's not necessarily a statue anymore, but all these things that can kind of fill our lives up, being busy, having much to do, being tired. All of us are tired, and I'm not to, maybe it's a clinical thing you need to figure out, but I'm saying that we can serve the Lord instead of being sacrificing, or instead of serving ourselves. And I don't want this to be just but as for me and my house, we're going to do the right thing. And it is that, but it's more than that too. Because doing the right thing is not all that we're called to. We're called to point to Christ. And I think it's about, but as for me and my house, we're going to point our entire direction at God. We're going to go towards what God wants, what Christ wants, and loving in that. I think that's why also, this is the shortest verse that we're going to memorize, and also the longest. This isn't something that you're going to go out tomorrow and finish. In practice, it's really, really hard. Tomorrow, I'm going to go to work, and I'm going to sell restaurant supplies. And is that serving the Lord? Like, it doesn't feel weighty. It doesn't feel that important. It feels like I'm just going to do my job, clock in, clock out. But our whole life, our whole trajectory needs to go towards serving the Lord. So I think also these desires that we have, we need to replace them. So if I'm serving something else, I need to serve this. A couple years ago, I got a new job. I got a big boy job, and Rachel and I worked, and we saved enough money to put a down payment on a house. And that felt like a huge accomplishment. Right before we bought that house, it felt like the most money that I ever had in my, and it was not Phil, it was the most money I ever had in my life. And it was like, oh my gosh, Rachel, we're rich. This is amazing. And we buy the house, and of course my bank account goes a lot further. And so we're there in this house, and it feels like, I got my big boy job, I'm in my big boy house, and I'm like, this is awesome. And I found myself kind of trusting in riches. In 1 Timothy 6:7, it says, "Command those who are rich in this present world not to be arrogant, nor to put their hope in wealth, which is so uncertain, but to put their hope in God, who richly provides us with everything for our enjoyment." Andy Stanley has a book called Be Rich, and it says, he has this kind of mantra thing in there. It says, "I will not trust in riches, but in him who richly provides." And I found myself in that situation 6 years ago, like, am I trusting in God? Am I serving God, or am I serving myself and trusting in my own riches? And I use riches with quotes. but that's, I think that that verse says, "Command those who are rich in this present age." Again, we were born in a vineyard that we didn't plant, in a fertile ground like the nation that we're living in right now. So I printed this out and posted it on our wall. It's been there. It looks probably really gross. It's aging, but I feel like this is something that we can also all do. I will not trust in relationships. I will trust in the one relationship I have with Christ. I will not trust in things. I will trust in what God has given me and done for me. I think that's an easy way to kind of replace that. So, but as for me and my house, we are going to serve the Lord. I want to tell you a story of two households this morning. The first one is from the Bible, and it's from the book of, I think it's Luke here. Let's get right into it. And I didn't put it in there. It's Luke. I'm pretty sure it's Luke. But this is a story that Jesus told, a parable of two sons. And so this is a story that Jesus made up to kind of illustrate a point, and I want to read it with you this morning. So Jesus continued, "There was a man who had two sons. The younger one said to his father, 'Father, give me my share of the estate.' So he divided his property between them. Not long after that, the younger son got together all he had, set off for a distant country, and there squandered his wealth in wild living. After he had spent everything, there was a severe famine in that whole country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to a citizen of that country, who sent him to his fields to feed pigs. He longed to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. The son had everything his father had, and he said, 'But as for me, I'm going to serve myself.' And he left. He took the vineyard and the olive orchard that he's planted in that was grown for him and wasted it all. He chose to not serve the Lord. And I think, some of us have sons or daughters or friends or family who have chosen, I'm just not going to do that. And you see them squander what they had, what they were planted in. And that's tough to see. And we also, some of us some of us are that prodigal child. Some of us were the ones said, I get that I've been given, and this isn't even a matter of wealth or riches or things, but I've lived in my life, and I've seen what my parents have taught me, or I've seen what God has done for me, and as for me, I'm going to serve myself. So there's a certain change that happens here, and Jesus continues the story. So when he came to his senses, this is the first son, he said, 'How many of my father's hired servants have food to spare, and here I am starving to death? I will set out and go back to my father and say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants.' So he got up and went to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. The son said to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son.' But the father said to his servants, 'Quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found.' And so they began to celebrate. This son was saying, 'But as for me, I'm going to serve myself.' And he changed his trajectory. He wasn't even saying, 'But as for me and my house, we're going to do the right thing.' He just was serving himself. And he says, 'But as for me and my house, we're going to serve the Lord.'" Now, the father in this situation is a metaphor for God. Again, Jesus is telling the story. So the father there was running to him. And our Father does the same to us. Those of us who have said, "I don't know about this whole thing, this Jesus thing, this Bible thing, it's just a little weird, this church thing, this personal relationship thing that really kind of wigs me out." And the Father here was waiting, running down the lane, looking for him. The son changed his trajectory. He changed what he was pointing at. And so that's the easy one. It's easy to point fingers at that son and see him being like making his bad decisions or whatever. But there was a second son. Meanwhile, the older son was in the field. When he came near the house, he heard music and dancing. So he called one of the servants and asked him what was going on. "Your brother has come," he replied, "and your father has killed the fattened calf because he has him back safe and sound." The older brother became angry and refused to go in. So his father went out and pleaded with him. But he answered his father, "Look, all these years I've been slaving for you and never disobeyed your orders. Yet you never even gave me a younger goat so that I could celebrate with my friends. But when the son of yours, who has squandered your property with prostitutes, comes home, you've killed a fattened calf for him?" "My son," the father said, "you are always with me, and everything I have is yours. But we had to celebrate and be glad, because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found." This is me. I can be that older son. This is where I fail personally. It's easy to say, "But as for me and my house, we're going to do the right thing." This son was doing the right thing. He was at his father's property, serving, working, following the rules, being a good person. But he was still doing it with the wrong motive and the wrong heart. He wasn't doing it because he wanted to love his father or serve his father. He was doing it because he wanted what his father had, his inheritance. "As for me and my house, I'm not just going to do the right thing. I'm going to serve the Lord. As for me and my house, I'm going to point my whole direction that way. Second story, William Belts. William Belts was born in 1938. This is a true story this time. He was born into a time and a place that he didn't pick and a family that he didn't choose. His dad was an alcoholic and an angry man. And his mom got wise to this and remarried, and his stepdad did the same. William met a woman, Sharon Parker, who in youth group, or as they were kids, and they went to youth group together. And at 17, she was 17, he was 19, they got pregnant, got married. Stopped going to church, got married. And you can imagine in this time, too, it wasn't probably seen, it was probably frowned upon. And so they left the church and came every once in a while for Christmas and Easter. And so William Belts continued his life. He chose not to serve God, but to serve himself. He began worshiping the idols that his father worshipped of alcohol and more bad decisions. By the time he was 34, he had 3 daughters and a 4th that he didn't even know about. His life was a mess. He was following in his father's footsteps, worshiping the gods of his fathers. Bill broke his leg and ended up in the hospital. Was there 10 days, and he had friends telling him, Bill, you need to change your life. You need to point your life at God. And he chose not to, so. He woke up one morning and saw a bright light. In that moment, he knew he needed to give his life to God. So he changed course. This verse here, and if it's evil in your eyes to serve the Lord, choose this day whom you will serve. Bill made a choice that day. He said, I'm not going to serve myself. I'm not going to serve the gods of my fathers. They've done me no good so far. He said, but for me and my house, we're going to serve the Lord. So he made a choice. He changed his family tree that day. Bill was married and had kids and daughters. His daughters had kids, and his kids had grandchildren, more kids. As you can tell, I was freaking crying. That's me there. Because my grandfather made a choice years and years ago, 25 people were affected by his decision that day. Me, and my sister, and my mom. I practiced this and didn't cry at all when I did it. I was planted into a vineyard that I didn't pick, that my grandpa, so many years ago, planted me in. Dang it. Have I had a sermon yet where I haven't cried? Sorry, guys. Our family is not perfect by any means. My grandpa obviously gave birth to a mom and then gave birth to me, who's a crier, so we're not perfect. No, our family is not perfect. We're not the perfect family. There's so many, that baggage that I talked about. We have baggage in our family. We have issues in our family. But he chose that day whom he was going to serve. And he put his life on a trajectory towards Christ. I talked to him on the phone this week. It's a funny story. I told him what I was going to talk about and asked if I could share his story. And I said, I'm talking about this, like, choose this day who you're going to serve that you chose, and it's awesome. He says, Josiah, I didn't choose. God did it all. I'm like, okay, you're Jesus juking me right now, Grandpa. I appreciate that. You're right. Yes. But you ruined my whole sermon. I'm still going to preach it. No, but so he chose that day to follow God, and he accepted God's, free gift of salvation. We've talked about that before here. So I ask you guys, choose this day whom you will serve. Whether the gods your father served in the region beyond the river or the gods of the Amorites in whose land you now dwell. But as for me and my house, we're going to serve the Lord. As for me and my house, we're not just going to do the right thing. We're going to point our lives at Christ and go that direction. I'm going to pray for us. Thanks. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this morning. Thank you for these stories of prodigal children or older brothers or bill belts that remind us of just who we are and our lives and what we've been born into. I pray that we take the vineyards that we're planted in and we don't squander them, we don't misuse them, but that we choose to serve you. I pray for those of us who maybe haven't made that choice, that we consider what that means and look to serve you and make that choice today. And it's not in the short, it's for a long-term thing. I pray that we all can choose this day who we're going to serve. And say strongly, but as for me and my house, we're going to serve the Lord. In your name, amen.